Hi, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, can I interest you in this nifty shaped picture disc?
Hmm. Jim, I kind of like my vinyl like I like my coffee. Flat, black, and circular.
And welcome once again to Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast. Each week, we two guys get together and we talk about, vinyl records. My name is Jim and I own a record store.
And I'm Steve, a record collector.
You know, it's been a wild week for you, hasn't it? We had to kind of take that little break because of the schedule last week. What you called Memorial Day Christmas for pool cleaners.
Yeah, Christmas for pool cleaners or Hell Week because it was hell. But things have quieted down and it's starting to click. So I actually can be here on a Sunday morning and doing this, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, and that I feel for you. The other thing too, instead of calling it Christmas, could you call it Record Store Day for pool cleaners?
Well, there's actually enjoy. I guess for you it's that way, and for me too, because the money starts pouring in for me also. Yeah.
Okay, but it's been a busy couple of weeks leading up, so I'm glad you survived.
Yep.
Actually, when you first got out to Colorado. And we talked obviously lots about you going into the pool cleaning business with your son. I joked about you cleaning pools as part of it. You're supposed to be like that managerial type thing.
Yeah.
And then what do I see of your super busy weekend? A picture of you posted cleaning a pool.
Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. Though I'm not properly trained. Let's just say that. But I can sure clean crap off the top of them.
There you go. That's that's probably the most important thing in some cases, minus the Clark bars floating.
Exactly.
So it has been a couple of weeks, but we like to talk about, because this is the Vinyl Community Podcast, we like to talk about recent pickups, and I think we may have a couple. I've got a few built up here. How about you?
I got a pile with another pile coming. And so, it's been a couple weeks. And just shall we say, it isn't like the old days going to see you every Sunday and coming home with a slug, but there is Radio Wasteland Records because Jim does deliver. Now, personally, he sends it to you. But
yeah, you did get a package from us.
Yeah, I did, and there's some great stuff. But we're gonna start off with this one. We did that thing on bootlegs.
Yeah,
I found a record store close to where I work, and they had this Wanted, the Velvet Underground, the Murder Mystery, and this is a concert. Look at that! I got a receipt in there. It's from 1968. A concert they did. So John Cale was gone, and by then, but it's what we were talking about older bootlegs. Sometimes the quality is suspect, and I knew this one maybe. There it is off Brigand. So really pretty cool. I just saw that and thought I need to give this a try. See what it's
How is have you had a chance to go through the sound quality yet?
Yeah, it's okay. It's not terrible, but it's not going to blow your away. Okay. You can hear it, but they do Sister Ray, so that goes on for quite some time. Then
side one.
At that same place, they had the Rhino Naked. And I know this sold out. You weren't able to get that one back in even. They had a couple copies of this from Talking Heads. When this originally came out, I was like, oh, it's, I was a huge Talking Heads fan, but I was kind of beginning to lose a little interest. And this album didn't do much. Man, I played this one again, and I really liked it. Side one. I like side one a lot. Side two is kind of so-so, and it had beautiful purple vinyl. Cool. So that was, again, I don't need to be a completist on Talking Heads, but I'm pretty damn close, so I probably will be. And I got a lot of
that extra little bit.
Yeah. Mighty Lemon Drops, Record Store Day, you were able to No, actually, no, it was out here. I was able to get a copy of the Record Store Day one. Really
Okay.
liked what I heard. And so I bought this. This is their third album, Laughter. This one did pretty good in the US, charted all the way up to 195. But for the US, that's really good. And yeah, I like, yeah, it's poppy. It's great harmonies, great guitar playing. If you like a Rickenbacker guitar, when they started, they were more Jesus. I mean, they're more like Echo and the Bunnyman. Here, they're finding their own, and yeah, really sunshiny.
Cool.
Then from Fuzz Club, the third sound. Yeah, I don't know. There's only this is 243 out of 300, so I don't know about the sound clip on this one. New album came out this year. It's their sixth album, first one I've had, and they're from Berlin. It's a neo-psych post-punk group. A little dark, again, kind of shoegazy, but not super shoegazy. Yeah, it's just an interesting sound. Most Perfect Solitude was the name of the album, so really neat. And the final couple, and this came from a Radio Wasteland. You got to strike fast. When Jim shows some stuff, or sometimes no one else wants it but me. But an original Black Flag, My War, and this red hot, man. This is great. Sounds fantastic. Really loving it. I'm not like oh my God, Black Flag, I have to have everything, but I do like their stuff, and always interesting cover art. Then there was, I think this is a second or third pressing, Black Flag Damaged. I had an original. So there's my original album. Obviously, I needed a cover. This cover is different from the original cover, but still, it's a very early pressing. So I'm very happy to get that. And then the big one, Sonic Youth, and this is Dirty. This is one of my all-time favorite Sonic Youth albums. Probably my second favorite one. And to get this was huge. I mean, I've never seen it in the wild. And I don't know, sometimes, Jim, the weirdest things pop up in your store. It's like, oh my God, I must have. And yeah, this fantastic. It has just 100% on here. Swimsuit issue. It's just sugar cane is on this thing. Wonderful stuff. On my phone, I have a number of songs from this that I put onto my phone just because I like this album so much. So
we can land them once in a while, man. I'll tell you what.
And it's really helped my collection. So yeah, fantastic. So
I'd like
do you have that much?
I do, but I want to take a quick reminder to let folks know that, especially this week, holy cow, you got a lot there. We will put together a Spotify playlist so you can hear some clips from these albums that we're raving about. And you get a chance, obviously, for copyright reasons. We don't put them in the podcast, but if you can get a hold of a Spotify player or just right through the web player, you can listen to these clips. But we'll get that up there usually, and we'll link to that on our Facebook page as well. But yeah, it's been a quiet week this week, but before I did pull a bunch in. I've been going through a lot. It's been a little slower at the store this past week or two, so I've been trying to get to some of the piles in the back, and there will be a couple of surprises back there I'll talk about down the line, because me, I'll put something back there to sit, and then it'll slip for a little while, and then I'll find it and go, why didn't I grab this and put it out or grab it for myself? But there may be a few of those things coming up. But pickups this week. You mentioned bootlegs. The last episode we talked about bootlegs as well. And I picked up another new Pink Floyd bootleg. This is Pink Floyd Sapporo, a Japanese broadcast from 1972. And this is a bootleg that's been out there on compact disc. And I think I did some digging around, and there are some vinyl versions of this previously, but this is a new pressing of this older concert, an older bootleg concert. And some nifty Pink Floyd stuff in there talking about the tour. This is a Dark Side era. It's got Breathe on the Run time, pretty much most of the Dark Side of the Moon on there. And then they dive into, One of These Days, Echoes, and Careful with That Axe, Eugene. So they're still playing off a little bit of that old stuff. It could have been just pre-Dark Side as they were beginning to test that album out. before actually releasing it, tested out with some of their live show. And the cover was actually kind of cool. But
yeah,
I was excited to get into this. But once I listened to it, it's not as good as some of the other Pink Floyd boots that we talked about in the last episode. It's soundboard quality, although I did read one of the comments on Discogs for a different version of this that talked about it being an audience recording. And I don't think it's an audience recording. I just think it's not a great soundboard recording. But, and I'm going to name and shame on this. This is a record label I'd not heard of before called Off the Shelf Records. And I'd have to go back and listen to if I can find some of the other bootlegs, but they were off speed a little bit on this pressing. Now I've got, my Techniques turntable has got a pitch adjustment, so I can move that a little bit, but it felt like this was mastered a little slow. So it's not terrible, but you kind of sort of notice it, that the vocals seem a little more drawn out. And I thought, well, what if I speed this up a couple of RPMs and it sounded a little better? So
okay.
I'm going to be, the new one of our newer distributors has access to a lot of these live stuff. So I'm just going to be on the lookout now for this Off the Shelf label. Just they're on my radar now as somebody who've done not great on that one. So now a couple of weeks back, I also mentioned there's another big pickup that we had a bunch of imports come in, and I kind of hinted that there was something big in there that I was probably going to keep. Mm-hmm. Here that is. This is a UK, you can't really see it, obviously, with the cover. It's a UK copy of Pink Floyd's The Wall, speaking of Pink Floyd. And it is a first pressing 1979 version. Let me get to my notes on this and see what's special about it. It's no slouch on Discogs. It sucker hits between like 120 and 250. And I already have a copy. I've got a good first press US of The Wall, but I don't have a UK. This gets back into our discussion, Steve, about, just how many copies of these do we actually need?
Yeah.
So, but this thing, it was so beautiful, and it has got the added bonus of being the listing of Roger Waters only, where he kind of hosed the band over, which helped cause a lot of the rift between them. And so later, not pressings, but later printings of the jacket at least had the other band members credited more appropriately. So that's how you can tell the earlier presses of both the US and the UK. The Wall is when it just says words and music, Roger Waters, except. And so that the later prints of the covers at least had words and music by Roger Waters, David Gilmour, Rick Wright, and Nick Mason. Okay. So they listed them all in there. And this one was actually kind of difficult to nail down in Discogs, even though, there were several different UK pressings, but notable that the inner sleeves had the tapered or rounded edges on there. So I thought long and hard about it and said, do I really need another copy of The Wall, another first pressing of The Wall? And the answer was, well, I've got my good one at home. I need one here at the store.
It kind of, it's Rush, Pink Floyd, and they might be Giants.
I think that's getting there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then finally, before I talk about this last pickup, I do have to give a little background music. Listen to me, background info on this. Background music.
I can make some.
You can. La, 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 la. So let me call this up. Have you ever heard of an artist by the name of Jake Holmes?
No.
This is the above ground sound of Jake Holmes. This was an album released by this American singer-songwriter back in 1967. And this is really notable because it contains the original version of Dazed and Confused, which Jimmy Page turned into a Led Zeppelin song eventually. Yeah. Let's put it like that. But the reading I've done on that song in this album and the artist was that during his stint with the Yardbirds, Page was in New York and he went to a club and he heard Jake Holmes playing, and Jake Holmes played Dazed and Confused, and Page loved it so much that he just decided to start playing it himself. And I don't believe that there was ever an official release of a Yardbirds version. I found a digital copy of it once of them playing it live somewhere, which was different enough than the Jake Holmes, but still it was called Dazed and Confused. And they changed a few of the lyrics, but the music beat was still about the same. And then lo and behold, that became a Zeppelin staple a little bit later on and pressed for Zeppelin. So And I think that there was some litigation down the line. I'd have to go back and look my history up. But I bring this gentleman up because Jake Holmes, and I have got that in my collection. I came across this very interesting record. It's called Music from Building a Better Way.
Okay.
This is the 1974 Chevrolet announcement film. So they made a film, a promotional film for all of the 1974 models for Chevy. And let me call this up here. And in looking at this, there's no information other than, say, the 1974 announcement. Motion Picture presents filmmakers' interpretation of the Chevrolet system, research and design, proving the products, building and selling them. The music in this album is the original score from the film soundtrack, including the variations on the 1974 advertising theme that were used in the product presentation segment. So themes that were eventually used in Chevy commercials in 74. Note, this record is not cleared for commercial broadcast use. Now, it's kind of just cheesy instrumental stuff. I gave it a listen. It's not actually in the best of shape, but Discogs is pretty good on this. They listed as jazz, funk, soul, stage and screen, score, jazz, funk, easy listening.
Okay, covers it all.
It covers it all, and it floats. I mean, the low end around $40, and the high end about $180. But what's most interesting is that Discogs, even though there's nothing on the album cover, nothing here, nothing on the label whatsoever to indicate that lists this as, I'm holding it upside down, it lists it as a Jake Holmes album, the same Jake Holmes as this kind of folk artist. So I'd have to go back and do some digging. And if it turns out that Jake Holmes never quite made it as a performance artist or a recording artist in that respect, but he became a jingle writer and did music for the likes of Dr. Pepper. And he had some fairly a good resume for creating commercial and music for commercials. And I guess a year or so before, he did some music for Chevrolet for another one of their announcement films. So somehow Discogs, through their discussion, just said, hey, this is Jake Holmes also, even though there's nothing to indicate that it is. And so there's some discussion in the Discogs discussion under the release to say, how can we prove, what evidence is that this is Jake Holmes, other than just say, we think it's Jake Holmes. Because there's no vocal. I think one of the songs has some vocals, but I believe it's just some background singers and session musicians. So, but it's very cheesy instrumental stuff.
Yeah.
And some of the songs on here, in case you're wondering, there's a song called Corvette, one called Camaro, Vega, Monte Carlo, Nova, the Chevelle theme, Trucks, the Capri, Impala, and then the one with vocals is called Selling, It's a Better Way.
Yeah, I wonder if the one on Vega had. I mean, can you have music like Junk, Rusting Out?
Yeah, that goes back to that Lou Reed album you showed the other day with just the clanking of metal falling off.
Yeah. My dad had a Vega during the gas crisis, and better get a cheap one of them cars. And
Well, I thought that was an interesting album. I'm not a car guy, but I'm a record guy, and it's an interesting thing to have. So
yeah,
I'll kind of put that with the Jake Holmes for now and see where it takes me. But
the Jake Holmes collection. I'm a
Jake Holmes completist.
Yes.
So onward we go to the subject at hand. By the way, I don't know as if I'm going to find a sound sample from that one in Spotify.
I don't know if anybody cares.
At this point, no. You want to hear the Vega song, Steve? I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Clank. So, subject at hand this week, Steve and I got talking. We thought we would spend a little bit of our discussion talking about gimmick vinyl. This has been around just as long as vinyl has. They're finding different ways to sell things to us gullible record collectors because, hey, it's a shaped disc or a picture disc or colored vinyl or something like that. But it's always something that makes things, I think, a little bit more interesting. Not necessarily ease of collecting in some cases. This Monkeys that we showed at the top, it is a shaped picture disc from Record Store Day from a few years back. It's just a single. And quite frankly, it's in this PVC holder, and I'll pull it out so we can actually see the shaped picture disc in there. It is terrible to try to store. It's kind of a neat little it's a neat little thing, and you can actually play it. But other than that, you maybe play it once or twice, and that's about it. And the rest of the time, you're just kind of looking at it like, hey, it's kind of a cool collectible.
Yeah. Which is kind of you have, record store day. There's always a good, way to find some of these. They would have. I remember I had a Father John Misty. He was shaped like a heart. Just
Yep.
kind of cool. I go, well, that's kind of neat looking. So they did their job. They got me to buy something that I wasn't going to buy or even cared about.
The latter record store day stuff this year being on 420, no exception. They put out that pot leaf shaped picture discs. There's usually a few of those every year. So
yeah.
But we'll get back to the vinyl itself, because there's some very interesting gimmicky vinyl. But one of the things I think that is the first and foremost thing that draws us in are interesting inserts or covers. Some fun stuff that happens there, and you've got a couple that you're very proud of, I think, too, right?
Yeah, I do, and you're right. A cover is really important, and when you can make it a little extra special, you go, "Whoa, all right!" And the two I'm going to show, and they're very common. Everyone knows about them, but they're from Andy Warhol. And Warhol really wanted to do more covers, but he would get pretty out there, or they weren't realistic, or very hard to do. But you have the famous Velvet Underground, the banana peel, and this is a first press. It has the picture, which I have my couple originals in there, but the picture should have been the other ones. They kind of take the picture out on top. Because of a lawsuit, but this was made to peel off, and again, super gimmicky, but I mean, it's iconic. And if you can find an original with the whole peel, God bless you, you got a heck of a find. You can see this thing even has water damage, but it still goes for a lot of money because of the back cover and the picture. But super gimmicky, very cool. And the same with the Rolling Stones with the zipper, the famous zipper. And, Jim gave me a good trick on that. He says, when you store it, put a piece of cardboard in front of this, because that zipper is going to dig into whatever records you have in front of it. But, again, just a Warhol, you unzip it. You got the Rolling Stones tongue hanging out there. So, kind of a fun thing. But, yeah, in Warhol, he was always mad at the Velvet Underground, or especially Lou Reed, because he didn't call him to do more album covers for him. So that was a point of contention with Andy. But he did some other record covers, and along with some other artists, and kind of a gimmick to bring people in. Some people would just go, "Oh, that's Andy Warhol." They jump at that, but yeah, definitely something different.
That Rolling Stones, that Rolling Stones album, much like the Velvet Underground banana peel, and we talked about before with the Butcher cover with the Beatles, comes in different states. Now the banana peel, it's either a full banana, in your case, it's a partial one where somebody peeled it off, or it's completely gone. Reissues, by the way, of that one have that peelable banana on there. They've recreated that, which is actually kind of cool. The Rolling Stones zipper one, it's the same thing. That cover had been glued on there. You could unzip it, but you couldn't really see anything unless you peeled that. It became almost a gatefold cover at that point. But then you stood the risk of ripping the cover or damaging the zipper, so it wouldn't. So you can find that in various stages. One of the, big ones that I've got cover-wise, and this is a reissue. I've got an original of Alice Cooper's Schools Out. I think this is another great example of a very gimmicky cover. And I actually, a couple of years back, I think on one of the other videos we did on our YouTube channel, I interviewed Alice Cooper, and I asked him specifically about some of his covers. And he just thought, you know what? The record company knew we were selling records. And he basically just said, we had an art guy that was really inventive, and we came to us with this idea, and we went to the company, and the record company was like, yeah, whatever, just go ahead. But they thought that they were a little weird. But if you're unfamiliar, the Schools Out is always a difficult one originally to find that's not destroyed, because it opens up into a school desk that you could quite stand on there, but early copies all ripped up. But most famously, that shipped with a pair of panties.
Mhm.
Now the reissue from a couple of years back recreated that. Now it's nothing really more than a piece of paper with an elastic rubber band in there, but still, the originals came with either white, blue, or pink. So if you've got one of those three colors in the original, you've got yourself a decent collector's item. I think that the reissues only came with the white ones on there as
Like
well.
that one.
Like that one. Yep, there's your original.
This is a beautiful one. I got it. Radio Wasteland.
Yep. They're fun to
I had
find.
the other one. I didn't show this you for the Cramps, the 3D album covers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And a variety of groups have done this one. I mean, have done 3D covers. And I'm sure I bought this from you, Jim. And of course, and these are what's hard to find. Look at me. I'm in 3D. Wow. I look pretty cool. But a lot of times those are missing, but definitely a cool gimmick. And, that you could throw those on. And it does look really, really neat. So I have a few of these from different artists I've done. But, this is to me probably, my favorite, most famous one that I know of. So, the Cramps off the bone.
I've got a punk one from the 3D Invisibles, the same thing. It came with the glasses. And, Grand Funk Railroad, I don't have one here to show, but Grand Funk Railroad actually put it out where the glasses were perforated in as part of the cover. So much like the other ones in various states, if you find them with the glasses have been punched out, or sometimes their glasses are punched out and with it, or the really good ones are where the glasses haven't been touched and they're still a part of the cover. So
that's hard to find. Like someone was like, "Oh, I'm not going to touch that." Back then, it wasn't about collecting. It's like, "Oh, that's cool. Let me take those out."
You got to try this, man.
Yep.
So outside of the covers, which is really the first line of weakness for a lot of us collectors when we see some cool stuff or cool covers, is the gimmicks that can be incorporated into vinyl. We've already talked a little bit about shaped picture discs, but picture discs are one of the ways that they can say, "Oh, hey, come on and try this out." Traditionally speaking, picture discs, especially in the 70s and 80s, some of those, the audio quality is just not there. And it actually says, I think I've seen like a Boston one, for example, said, the audio quality is poor. This is really meant for looking, but hey, it's a picture disc all the same. I think they're doing a little bit better with the audio quality on picture discs today. But how far back do you think the idea of a picture disc goes, Steve?
I don't know, 70s, 60s.
Way back. How about 1940s?
Wow.
I have got this one in my collection, and quite frankly, I've had this as long as I can remember. It must have been my grandparents, and then it made its way to my parents. And then when I was a kid, I just remember seeing this in the record cabinet, and I would play it a few times on the little suitcase. It's a 78 by a group called the King's Jesters, and the song is "Go On Home, Your Mudda's Calling." And there's a King's Jesters on the back side of this as well, with the song Sepulveda. Can't even say that right. But this one was always, I remember playing that when I was a kid and always thought that was fun. But the audio quality obviously is going to be horrible on that. This is in Discogs, by the way. 1947 10-inch picture disc. Tops out at about $20 to $45 in through there in decent condition. But I don't know. It says it's jazz, but it really feels more like a novelty, almost like a Spike Jones novelty type of song and a record on there. But it was always just fun as a kid. And I didn't even really realize, hey, this is just kind of almost like a toy. But those kind of picture discs were always fun to find in through there. But I think more importantly, as we get into the 70s, let me show this off. This is, I don't know if you would call this a picture disc, Steve. This came off of the back of an Alphabets box, and it's the Archies. And it was one of a series they did in Alphabets, but this song is "You Make Me Wanna Dance" from the Archies from 1970. And for those that are really unfamiliar, we would get cereal back then, and the back of the box would be a playable record. You'd have to cut it out. Sometimes it was perforated. Sometimes you would just have to cut it. And I think that's what was done here. This came into the store. This is not mine, by the way. I don't know where it happened. I had a few of these, but I don't know where they've gone over the years. I had a Jackson 5 one also from the back.
Yeah, they had. I remember on Alphabets, ABC was the song. ABC. Yes. And I had that also. Perfect.
Marketing made in heaven. They're not worth a tremendous amount of money, but they're still kind of cool if you run across them once in a while. Then from the 80s, I found this one also came into the store. It's Alf. If anybody remembers Alf,
Yeah.
this was the an Alf Melmac Girls, kind of a play on the Beach Boys, but this was a Burger King collectible. So you've got that from Burger King. I know all that stuff is in Discogs too. It's interesting to come across, but I don't think that you should really count on any kind of audiophile quality with that. Probably not.
They're perfect for a Crosley.
There you go. Probably originate. Now, yeah, picture discs in general. Is there a lot of picture discs in your collection?
Not really, no. I've kind of always shied away from because of the quality and do I really need them? But that one's in my collection now, yeah.
And this one, this is an original. I think I tracked it down on there too. And you can actually just see the imperfections. It's bubbly in there. It's obviously it's not going to be playable, and it's not even really worth that much. But we got that there. But the ones that are playable, you can see my clock behind me. I've got a Rush picture disc. I've had that thing forever, and for some reason turned it into a clock 20 some odd years ago. But Rush has reissued Hemispheres as a picture disc as well. And I think that's what is key for some picture discs is that it's got to be something worthwhile to look at. It just can't be,
yeah.
It just can't be, in this case, it's a cool Hugh Syme album cover, or in the case of Pink Floyd, it's something cool to look at too. But other than that, I don't see that picture discs. Not a big part of my collection. I just have a few.
Someone had just sent me at kind of as a lark a Barry Manilow greatest hits picture disc, and it just has his face on the front. There wasn't anything like, oh my, look at how cool. Just you get a picture of Barry on the front as you spin this thing, but it's a 2 picture disc set.
And yeah, you're going to listen to that a lot, aren't you?
Yeah. If my wife ever decides that she wants to hear a record, that would be the one.
I'll just wait and see if I get a double frame behind you with both berries.
Yeah. Or a clock.
Mount that one. Yeah. Oh, 2 clocks.
Yes.
You could put one on Michigan time and one on Colorado time.
Perfect.
Kind of like a stock market. Now, what other kind of weird things have you run across as far as the vinyl itself? The gimmicks that sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're cool, sometimes they're just freaking creepy.
Yeah, sometimes they're obnoxious. But yes. I guess it's kind of with this one. They added a set of colored pencils so you could color this, or even think of the Who's by number. They made it so people. Most of them have they've connected the dots, but this one was made color pencils, so you could color the whole album. But again, it's made. This is the Brian Jonestown Massacre. This is just hard to deal with because it sticks way out, and it's not practical. But again, the genius that runs the record store in Midland, Michigan, said, I just cut out a piece of cardboard and do that. And
there you go.
The guy's a genius, I'm telling you. So yeah, then this one, and you might have Zoetrope. I'm saying that right?
Zootrope. Yep, the Zoetrope picture disc. Zoetrope. Yeah, Zoetrope picture discs.
Now I have one of Fritz the Cat from a record store day, but the cover's gone. But I do love Nightmare Before Christmas. I think that's a great soundtrack, and it came in. There's 4 different. It's a 2 album set, so every side is different, and so you have 4 different Zoetropes, whatever we got going on there. I struggle on getting these right to see it. I'm looking at it. I have a Grateful Dead one, and it's supposed to be the bear walking. It's like I'm not seeing this. Where's it at? And others will see it. And I it beats me. But talk about a gimmick, right? And and this is where now a lot of these groups that have put out everything 10 times.
Yep.
Oh, we got another thing between the 3-inch disc, which novelty, to this, we can re-release our stuff again.
Well, Steve, the idea with the Zoetrope picture disc, it's meant to be spun at that certain speed. The light has to hit it just right, and then it creates this animation that is supposed to show up. It's a really, really old technology, and it's a precursor to how film worked, where you would shine light on frame by frame and things would move. But in this case, the picture discs are animated. I've got a really neat one here with They Might Be Giants, just to kind of show you how it's supposed to work. This is what technically it does look like when that zoetrope is working correctly, which I think is pretty darn cool. But again, you've got to get it working just right. So you haven't been able to get yours to see how they work, have you?
No, yeah, it's one of those high technology things. I need to have my son come over. So how's that work?
And you also mentioned the Pink Floyd, the latest live one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And you also mentioned Pink Floyd, the latest incarnation of Dark Side of the Moon that we both had to get, of course. That was another picture disc, but it was a different technology of a more playable, higher audiophile quality picture disc.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's what got us totally different now. And again, and so you take a 1 album set, now you can make it into a 2 album set because the backside is totally different. And the opportunity, again, to resell to people like us who will buy it. And here you go. Here's your 10th Dark Side of the Moon. Yep. Enjoy. Beatles will have this soon. Yeah. Exactly.
And you mentioned the Beatles, and this past record store day, they released a 3-inch set of records to go with a 3-inch record player. It's very, very gimmicky. They actually reintroduced these 3-inch record players have been around for a long time. And the company that makes the Crosley stuff put these things back out a few years back. And some artists have been releasing things on 3-inch. I don't have one to show. Let me call this up here. But here's the Beatles one from last record store day. It looks like they're still saying that they're purchase inquiry and they're available. But yeah, these things are, I mean, they're for the collector more than anything. That is a playable, workable record player that I think it runs off a battery, or you can plug it into a USB, and it will play a single-sided 3-inch record. And in this case, the Beatles. That sucker was pretty expensive over record store day. We weren't able to get any, by the way, here at our store, but I know folks were really, really looking for them.
Mm-hmm. Jack White, a couple years ago, he put that out too. I think it was for record store day. He threw that out and kind of scratching our head. And now the Beatles did, and everyone was trying to get at that.
A few years back, we did have one when they first reintroduced the 3-inch players. Somebody brought theirs back in after the fact from a record store day and said, here, listen to it. And I think it sounded bad. But again, it's not meant for listening quality. It's meant to put on your desk at work or somewhere at home, say, check this out, this little thing I got. Exactly. Now, on that notion, I've got a nifty one to show. I don't know how workable this is. Let me call this up. This record store day, probably about a week or so before RSD, and you know how nuts things get here, right? This envelope showed up here at the store, and it was addressed to us. I opened it up, and there was no note, no notification. I didn't get an email or anything, but inside was this. Now, this is going to be really, really difficult to see. Let me see if I can hold this up here better and call this up. This is called 5 Seconds of Magic by Ludwig Göransson. This just showed up out of the clear blue, no letter, no explanation, no nothing. I had no clue what that was all about. And so I just kind of set it aside. And then after the fact, I got an email saying, oh, hey, this was this little thing that Disney put out. And what it is, it's actually a gatefold album, Steve. It opens up. You can barely see it. I'm going to have to zoom in here for a second. There are liner notes all the way across there and credits that you can't see. They sent with it a little magnifier so you could conceivably attempt to see this. But the other cool thing is there was an autographed poster that was put in there as well. But the truly bizarre thing is that the thing was called 5 Seconds of Magic. There was a 2-inch record inside of it with playable sides. One is the 5 second of Magic, and it's listed as 5 seconds. And the other side is called 5 Seconds of Magic Radio Edit, and that comes in at 3 seconds long.
Radio edit.
So he's a composer who's done some work for Disney and a lot of their soundtrack stuff. And I haven't tried this yet, but I've read that it is truly playable on it's 33 1/3. I could put it on my turntable and listen to it for 5 seconds, flip it over and listen to the other side for 3 seconds.
And it would be magic. It would be total magic.
So, I mean, that was kind of a little gimmick. I don't know what they were trying to sell. Obviously, they're trying to promote their regular size records, but kind of a nifty little thing, I guess. But you need that magnifier to read all the inserts and credits in there to see what's going on.
Well, they gave you all the stuff, but a radio edit at 3 seconds. That's hilarious.
I mean, it's funny, it's cool, and like I said, I wish that they had given me a little more of a heads up, because when it showed up, I just kind of said, I don't know what this is, and I put it down and kind of forgot about it until after Record Store Day, and when I saw the email saying, oh, hey, this is a nifty little promotion for you. And I'm like, okay, all well and cool. Now, what are some of the oddest, and I had to do a little research on this. I don't have a whole lot of other odd things. That's odd for me. That 2-inch record is odd.
Yeah.
But in looking at some of this stuff, some of the things I found, and I don't know if you remember this from a few years back, the Flaming Lips pressed a record with a bunch of other artists that contained the blood of other artists inside, pressed into the vinyl. And you could actually see that blood moving around inside of the vinyl. They made 10 copies of this and sold it for $25,000 each. Did you pick up a copy of that?
I missed out on that. I wonder if it goes bad, or you can use it in case of emergency, break open.
Now I would be careful with some of that. $25,000, you'd think that would be an investment, but looking at Discogs, this thing is only ever sold for 10 copies of it. It's only ever sold a couple of times, the top being $400. But there is one copy, if you need one, there's one copy for sale for $7,000 if you need that, Steve. And you can see the picture that they've got in there too. I mean, that's literally filled with blood of the artists that helped out the Flaming Lips on that record.
Didn't Metallica do something? But it was
a few other artists have done things like that, where you can put liquid in records and work with it. In fact, I found this. I don't know where to go with this. The Flaming Lips. How do you top a blood-filled record if you're the Flaming Lips? Where do you go with that? Well, if you guessed, let's make a record filled with let's just say the leavings of Miley Cyrus.
Oh, wow.
They said that they wanted to make an album pressed with Miley Cyrus's urine inside of it, but I don't think they ever did. This is from a few years back. I couldn't find it on Discogs. Quite frankly, I think that was just Wayne Coyne being provocative, saying we're going to do this. Now, that'd be one too. It'd be real careful if you ever dropped that or scratched that record or broke it open. You can catch something.
You kind of want to sit around Wayne's table in the evening and just spitball ideas and what's coming up, and what did they not decide to do?
What could we do? Now, have you seen this service? And I've seen these. You see this on the web now. In the event of our eventual mortality, you can have your ashes. Let's say you're cremated. You can have your ashes pressed into a vinyl record to leave for your family.
I've heard about that. Yeah, my family
theoretically.
Yeah, sadly, my family does not know how to even work a turntable. So
no, I guess theoretically you could press your voice, have your voice pressed into the groove so you could talk. That's a little too creepy for me to really think about there. But
what are you doing with my record? Don't you sell those records?
Yeah. Don't let these go. Make sure you file them correctly. I should be filed under G. Now you mentioned Jack White. One of the other gimmicky stuff has Jack White's Lazaretto LP. Have you seen that, or have you messed with that before? The Lazaretto Ultra LP. This thing is about as gimmicky as gimmicks can get. Released, when did he release this? This was released back in 2014, and it's an Ultra LP, playable like a regular LP. but you have to do your research if you're going to be looking around at this. And from what I've read, I've got an open copy, and I've played it, but I've not really delved into it. But according to some of the stuff I've read, the Ultra LP release has got these special features. Tracks A6 and B7 are what are called locked grooves. They feature elements from their respective previous tracks. Allow a locked groove means that the needle's just going to get stuck and repeat itself infinitely as long as it's spinning. Let's see. Tracks A7 and B8 are hidden tracks, which are pressed onto the labels. So it's actually a playable label. You can't see it in this, but there is actually grooves on the label that you can move your needle to and play them. That's just a little bizarro for me to think about there. Now, the most annoying thing about this, though, Steve, is that side A has got what's called an inverted groove, which means that, and when I went to play this, I forgot about that. You set it down at the outer edge like you'd think, and it just sounded horrible, and it kept repeating. I thought it was skipping. But the inverted groove means is that you move your needle and your arm to the inside, and as it rotates normally, it plays from the inside out instead of from the outside in. So the groove is essentially playing backwards on this. And that is like truly, truly a gimmick. That it's just out there for me. So yeah, the Lazaretto, it's cool and all, but I think especially when you think of an inverted groove, it's just annoying.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other things too, you mentioned you've heard of like a multiple groove where you can play with something, and then if you go back the second time.
Yeah, when I had a Monty Python album like that, and I had no idea, and I just couldn't figure the whole thing out. Is what happened to that one skit? Why is it there? Why did it disappear? And why do I have something different? Totally confused, as a teenager with that whole thing.
It's basically a gimmick that they'll use to have multiple grooves on one side, where depending upon where your needle lands will be the content that you hear. So you'll hear either one groove or the other groove. I've got one of these. This showed up. Speaking of stuff that shows up odd here, you mentioned Black Flag earlier. Here's one from White Flag, and it's an album called Feeding Frenzy. This is from, when the heck is this? 1986. It's some nice little hardcore punk from White Flag, but it has one of those gimmick grooves. It's called a three-sided record. Now, when we see three-sided records, what's the first thing we think of? It's an etching on the fourth side, right?
Yeah.
Which is a gimmick unto itself. But this is a single LP. And depending upon where you set your needle on the groove, you'll play either side 2 or side 3 on that one. So again, you have to hit it just right. I forget what side 3. It was kind of an interesting one. Side 2 is a cover of Radar Love, a live version of the Golden Earring song. And then side 3 is back to the White Flag stuff. So I don't know. Is that annoying to you? When you played the Monty Python, you said, "What happened to this?"
Yeah, it is annoying. I found it's just like, why? Something different though. Something different. Surprise for people.
Yep. And the locked grooves they're kind of cool if you get to use them, because when your needle reaches the end of a record and hits the dead wax, with the exception of side A of Jack White's Lazaretto. So it goes the other way, but locked groove. Every single record has a locked groove. It's what keeps the needle from going into the label and ruining your needle. But sometimes artists will include some audio in that locked groove, and most famously, we get one from the Beatles and Sgt. Pepper. It's got a locked groove at the end, where as long as the record is spinning, that locked groove will just keep repeating that last rotation of the groove. Rush has got one like that on Permanent Waves. There's a locked groove, and there's a bunch of other ones that will just do that for artistic purposes.
Yeah, those I don't like because, I'll get called away or I'll go do something. The album's not over. I just figure the needle's going to go back over. You come up an hour or two later, it's still spinning. There was one where they were saying, you need to turn the record over. The record over. It's like, oh my God. And how long has that been going on?
So what are some of your, I guess I'll use the word favorite, or maybe as the most annoying types of record gimmicks? At the end of the day, Steve, for me, I like the music and I want the vinyl of the music. And there are a few groups, yes, I'll be suckered into the Gimmick. I'll buy it because I think it's kind of cool, or I want to have that as part of my collection of this particular group. But otherwise, I'm not usually that suckered in for shaped picture discs or other picture discs, but it's not something that is high up on my priority list. How's that?
Yeah, I agree. I try to not, stay away from it because I have the album. But then again, then this comes up,
That
and
comes along.
you go and you buy it because it's different. And yeah, who knows? I think a lot of times if I see it used, like the Alice Cooper,
Yep.
okay, that's kind of cool if it's all there and you wind up buying it. But overall, no, it's nothing that I out searching for.
Now, here's the bigger question, and we'll use this to kind of wrap up our discussion today. Things like the Alice Cooper, if you find a copy with the panties, things like the Velvet Underground, if you find an unpeeled banana, are worth a lot of money. I mean, more so than a regular used record would be, because someone took the time and effort to take care of that as it was meant to be, and it was kept intact. And it's very rare that you find things like that, the older ones that are. Do you think that these newer gimmicky albums are going to hold any value 30, 40, 50 years down the line?
That's a good question. Yeah, I guess it depends how much they put out. And some of these are harder to destroy. Like the Alice Cooper one is easy to get destroyed.
Yep.
So yeah, it makes a difference on rarity, no doubt.
Well, you can also look, I mean, what the Flaming Lips that they sold for $2,500 and now is selling for $400, with the exception of the one that's out there for $7,000, which I doubt will sell for that.
I'd be a little upset.
I do too.
This isn't worth 10?
No, my investments, it's down. So what do you folks think? Is there something out there that is cherished, that's a gimmick that you think is really cool? Please let us know. You can head over to the Facebook page, Two Guys Talking About Records, and leave a comment anytime you'd like there. Connect with us. YouTube, you can leave some comments. Still don't think you can comment on the Spotify side of things, but there's a little poll on there as well that we see the results to. But yeah, let us know what you think. And Steve, are you ready to kind of get back into the groove of this and start spinning now that things have calmed down?
I hope so. I still come up at night to listen to records and fall asleep instead, but we're working on it.
All right. So until next week, you folks have been watching and or listening to Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast. I think we're up in the air as far as subject matters go, so we'll figure that out as we head on.
Yeah.
So until next week, my name is Jim, and I own a record store, and I think we're going to open up here in a few minutes.
And I'm Steve, a record collector, and I'm probably going to go to work.
All right, it's Sunday, man. Oh, I have to work too. Thanks, Steve. Have a good one.
Yep. See you, Jeff. Bye, everyone.